Hello, Prairie View students, families, and staff. I hope you're all doing well and had a good weekend. It was beautiful outside. So I'm going to read again The Snow Treasure by Marie McSwiggan. And we're on chapter 5. Did anybody guess whose classroom I was in the other day? If you looked hard, you might have remembered. If you're an older student, it was Mrs. Tobin's classroom. Today I'm in someone else's classroom. Hope you can try and guess. Chapter 5. Peter and his father reached a level stretch. Their trail paralleled a railroad siding that ended abruptly in the woods. At one end of the track was a boxcar, and on both sides of it were men and sleds. Peter could see only dark outlines against the snow, for no light was showing. But when he got close, he saw that a lantern was lit, its beams carefully shielded by the backs of the men. One of the backs belonged to Uncle Victor. "Hi, Lars," he greeted his brother cheerfully. "So, you've brought Peter good." "He can help," his father said. "He can go with Olson. He's ready to leave. You can help him pull his sled, Peter." His father turned to him. "Watch where Ole is taking you, Peter. That's the place you'll want to remember." "Yes, Father." Peter gave a tug to the rope of the sled. It didn't move. "Give it a heave." "Heavy, I should say it is." Ole took up the rope. "It's 170,000 kroner. Your Uncle Victor would say $40,000. Peter didn't care what Uncle Victor would say. 170,000 kroner in that sack? He couldn't believe it. They followed the railroad siding in the direction he and his father had come. Then they took a trail that led downhill for a distance. This made the going easier, except where it was steep. There they had to hold the sled back to keep it from bumping their legs and knocking them forward down the slope. After a time, they came to a dense part of the woods. "Father said we were going to a cave," Peter asked Ole. "What cave?" "Wait, you'll see." Peter was mindful of his father's words to watch where he went and be able to return without help. Now he found he was recognizing landmark after landmark. Here was the rock they called the ship when they played. There was the tree that was rotted through. When he was small, Per Garson told him that trolls lived in that tree, and to this day he thought of it as the troll's tree. So he felt very much at home. Here he was in the woods he had known since babyhood. But in all his life, he'd never heard of a cave there. That's why he was surprised when his father told him he would see one. "We must be going a long ways off," he said. "I never heard of a cave anywhere near here." Ole grinned. "I guess you didn't," he said. "It's one we've made ourselves." "You made it?" "Yes, you'll see." They came to a high wall of snow. There they stopped. Ole led him past the wall and around its end. Now Peter could think of no part of the forest like this, where a wall stood as high as a man, and yet all the things near it were familiar. The ship and the troll's tree. Then he guessed that the wall, like the cave, had been built by men. When they drew the sled around it, he found himself blinking in the lights of the lanterns and flashlights. He was in a cave indeed. In it were dozens of men. There was room for many more. See the picture? "You made it." Peter was staggered. "Not all," Ole explained. "Behind those stacks is a wall of stone that slopes so you could stand under it in a heavy rain and not get wet." "I know, Thor's Rock, but it used to be open on every side." "We closed it in with blocks of ice." The men in the cave greeted Ole and Peter. Peter knew them all. There was Helga's father, and Nansen, the sailmaker, and Dr. Aker, and Mr. Anders, and the schoolmaster among them. They were busy as beavers. The ones in the back did not stop for more than a nod to the newcomers. 3 of the others rushed forward to remove the heavy brown sack from Ole's sled. Peter saw them rip it open and noted with surprise that it contained a number of smaller packages, each the size and shape of a building brick. These were counted carefully and listed on a paper Mr. Anders carried. 72, 73, 74, Dr. Aker was counting aloud. Later, the doctor reached 1,300. 1,300 of those bricks? Peter asked Ole. Yes, and each one of them contained 18.5 pounds of gold bullion, over 20,000 kroner. It's a regular Aladdin's cave you're in, Nansen, the sailmaker spoke. There weren't many boys who've been in a room with more than 20,000 pounds of gold. After a time, some of the men Peter had seen at the railroad siding began coming in. With each arrival, the same thing happened. The men in the cave would unload the sled, slid open the sack, and began counting and stacking the smaller packages it contained. Over them all hovered Mr. Anders with his paper and pencil. It's coming near the end, he smiled happily. Yes, praise all. Ole wiped his forehead. Tonight, you'll see the last. Nansen looked around from the wall he was making of the brick-sized packages. Here comes the rest, someone said as Uncle Victor and Peter's father came in together. Every last pound's been removed. Does that make it come out all right, Anders? Mr. Lindstrom asked. The schoolmaster made a swift calculation. He looked at the sheets in his hand and counted the sleds to be unloaded. 80, 87, 88. What have you there, Doctor? He asked his helper. They quickly added the figures. Well, Mr. Lindstrom, he announced proudly, it's exactly right. It's all here. The end. Hope you have a great night.